Oh, hey, Kirk, good to talk to you. Hope everything's going well for you. Hey, wanted to know what was kind of your initial reaction when the Vikings drafted Kellen Mond, and then what were your conversations like with Rick Spielman after that in terms of why that move was made?
Yeah, there was good communication through the process, and Kellen's been great, working hard and picking up our offense quickly. So it's been a good process, and we're just kind of building this thing right now to keep ramping up as we get closer to September.
Hey, Kirk, you mentioned the valuable time right now. Obviously, in regards to Justin, you did not have this a year ago with him on the field. How much of a difference do you think it'll hope you guys make this year? And what's that rapport with you and him? Where are you guys at right now?
It's a good question, because I think part of the reason you didn't see Justin as much in weeks 1 and 2 of the season would partly be due to the fact that the offseason was much shorter, or there really wasn't an offseason. And all we had was training camp, and even much of training camp early on was walkthroughs. And so it became difficult to not only evaluate someone to see what they're ready to do, but also, just all that we were throwing at him. It's much easier to learn it when you're playing football as opposed to just talking about it in a meeting or in a walkthrough. So there's value now for the next wave of young players coming through to be able to have that time on task. Certainly Justin, proved that he was caught up to speed very quickly and had a great rookie year. So now it's just about, building on that, and now being able to be consistent, year in and year out moving forward. And he has had a great 8 practices, I believe is how many we've had. He's had a great, 8 practices, and certainly looks to be the same player that he was last year. And it's I would say the same of a lot of other guys on our offense.
Joe, and then Will.
Yeah, Kirk, I'm wondering just how much time in the offseason you spend taking a look at past games, and then out of that, you get the emphasis on what you want to concentrate on in the offseason heading into camp.
Yes, great question. This year I decided to go back and really watch my whole career, watch a couple other offenses to see what they have been doing or what they did the year that they had a lot of success. And I do think that time looking at tape, through the winter and the spring, and even now as I go home, through the summer after next week, I do think that it's helpful to, to see what has worked in the past, what, I want to make as a staple for myself as I move forward, but then also, where I have improved or where I need to improve. And that evaluation certainly comes from your coaches day in and day out, but there's also got to be an ability to self-evaluate and say, I like what I'm doing there, keep doing that, or that's not good enough, I want to improve that. And I think being self-led and being tough on yourself can really help too as you watch tape, that you put out there.
Kirk, at practice today, we saw you connect with Tyler Conklin a number of times. With Kyle gone, what have you kind of seen from not only Tyler but Irv as well, and those tight ends early on in the spring period?
Both of them have had a really strong 8 practices, and it's been fun to see, what they're continuing to be capable of. I could compliment them for a while because they're deserving of it. And I'd also say that some of our younger tight ends have done really well as well. Brandon Dillon, Zilly, I think, has flashed quite a bit with his athleticism. You see that he was a former wide receiver, and that shows up in his ability to run routes, make difficult catches, and just be really comfortable in the pass game. And Zach as well, he just has a great size and frame, which you love, especially down in the red zone. And he's been separating in a lot of the match coverages that you see where, he's got to create separation versus a defensive back, and he's doing it. So that's been fun to see from all those guys. The challenge is the tight end position requires so much mentally. You have to learn the whole run game. You got to learn all the protections. You also got to learn all the pass game. So you pretty much have to learn like you're playing receiver, offensive line, and running back all in one. And it's a lot to put on somebody early. And so for Zach and Zilly, it's a lot of volume coming at them. But Irv and Conk, you see now with several years how they've kind of emerged as these veterans that now are really confident and know what's coming and have that that confidence on the field.
A couple of questions from Courtney and then Sam. Hey, Kirk. When this is a kind of like a broad question about quarterbacks and the dynamic when a young guy is brought in, because I remember a few years ago when Mason Rudolph was drafted by the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger was asked about, well, what's your role as the veteran guy, the established guy? Do you bring him along? Do you train him effectively? And he's like, well, he's got it. That's kind of on him. Where this kind of feels like the one position in sports that we almost unfairly put it on the veteran guy to bring everybody else along and, expect that potentially one day that somebody could supplant somebody for their job. As a veteran guy, as the established guy, how do you approach when they bring new quarterbacks in here to learn under you? Is it something that you seek out, like almost like a teaching tool, things like that? How do you go about that with Kellen and any other young quarterback?
I think you do the same thing. I do the same thing I've done with Nate Stanley, Jake Browning, Nate Sudfeld back when I was in Washington. You're an open book. You're helpful and you're there and make yourself available. And I had Rex Grossman when I was a rookie, and Rex had played in a Super Bowl and won a lot of playoff games and started a lot of games in the NFL and was in year 10. So it was great to be able to learn from him. And he was a big part of my early development as a football player. And I really, took every word that he said to heart, because I felt like he had been there, he had done that, he knew what it should look like. And I hung on his every word. So, I've been there and want to certainly be that same resource whenever possible.
Sam, and then Eric, and then Chris.
Yeah, Kirk, you've been on the offensive coordinator carousel for pretty much your whole career. So what have you learned about what's important in cultivating those new relationships every summer?
Yeah, great question. We're kind of in that process right now, going through it of the dynamic. I think what's interesting to kind of work through is the offense is very similar, essentially the same. So it's not so much the plays, it's more just the personality or the communication, the person behind the plays, the human being, if you will. And so while that changes, there are dynamics that you want to learn and observe. And the same for Andrew Janocko as the quarterback coach. The quarterback room, when Clint's not there, then, I'd say, okay, this is a different year. It has a different feel to it, different people in the room. So time certainly helps, just being together, meetings, practice, and kind of then being able to say, okay, this is how it's going to go. Just with our time on task, it shows me that. And, that's where this OTA time becomes very valuable. But it also is a positive that Clint's been my quarterback coach for 2 years. So I've spent so much time with him in the quarterback room, and I'd like to think he really knows how I'm wired, what I like. He's heard so much feedback for the last couple of years, and I think that certainly helps. But it's been unique to look back over 6 years and have 6 different play callers. I never would have thought that would happen, but I've been fortunate to be in pretty similar systems for the most part over those 6 years. And I think that's a blessing, because a lot of quarterbacks will have to change systems entirely. And, that's another conversation.
Kirk, you mentioned earlier that you went back and watched your whole career. Was that the first time you had done that? Like in previous years, had you just go back and watch the previous season, like just 16 games? And then was it the first time you'd watch all, 100 plus?
Yes, is the short answer. I wanted to go back and just really study it, create cut-ups, kind of build up some volume that I could pull from as we go forward. I regret that I hadn't done it earlier in my career, but I did, get the film set up at my house to basically have access to all of that. So that all off season, even if I'm not in the facility, I would have access to tape. And I do think it's been a really valuable resource to have. And I'm kicking myself that I didn't do it sooner in my career. But, it's just a piece that I think hopefully can help me improve this coming year.